I'd like to welcome you all to the New School University and Parsons School for Design. I'd like to thank ASMP and Lois Greenfield for putting together this event this evening. We're looking for an extraordinary conversation and a beautiful introduction to her work. Specifically, I'd like to thank the folks at ASMP for the hard work they've done in presenting and promoting this. I'd also like to thank Parsons School of Art, Media, and Technology for bringing the event in. They were a conduit into the university and this beautiful space. My name is Thomas Werner. I'm a professor here at Parsons, and I hope we get to see you at a number of events. We have events here in the auditorium and across the university on a regular basis, and the public is invited, so I hope we see you at future events. I'd like to introduce you to Tom Donnelly, the president of ASMP, who will be introducing Lois.
Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. This has been a process in getting it all together, and I'm really thrilled that tonight's the night. First, I just want to say a few things about ASMP, and then I'm going to introduce them, Lois and Paul. So, in 1944, if you were shooting for a magazine, they would own your work and not credit you. So in that environment, that's where ASMP formed, with some of the top photographers of the day. And ASMP has been advocates for photographers ever since. We're the oldest and largest trade organization of its kind in the country, and we are regularly advocating on Capitol Hill for legislation, including right now we are in the midst of advocating for a small claims copyright court to give access to the legal system to working photographers. We were also about raising the bar for the business of photography through education, through providing all sorts of benefits, and educating people on the best business practices for photography. We also are all about community, like tonight. You know, we like to bring what we do out into the community and show people who we are because we love what we do. Some of the things that we have coming up, we have a lot of different, we have quite a few events coming up. We have two major portfolio reviews. One is commercial, one is fine art. We have about 30 top professionals who come and review members' works. We have a seminar on contract, on pricing that will be coming in the new year. On December 2nd and 3rd, we have an assistance intensive that will be happening for anyone who wants to know what it takes to be an assistant. We also have many, many discounts with the Photo World, pro insurance packages, student insurance. If you're a student here, you can get a student insurance package and borrow equipment from schools and with impunity. Also, you can sign up to be a volunteer, anyone, if you want to be more involved and see what we're about and the kinds of things that we do. We periodically need volunteers, so we also have a couple people in the outside who, at the end, who can answer any questions about that. For this event, I'd like to thank Parsons School of Design and the New School, and particularly Thomas Werner, who's been a brilliant partner in this and friend. And what he did not say, and I was looking forward to saying, is that he was my predecessor many years ago as president of ASMP New York. And actually, the very first event that I came to in 2002 was in this very auditorium, and I've been looking forward to doing something here ever since because it made a big impression on me. I love the space, and it's perfect for what we do. I also want to thank our entire board of ASMP New York, and in particular, Peter Murphy, my partner in creating this. Thank you, Peter. On to our guests for tonight. Lois Greenfield, briefly put, is one of my inspirations. From early on, I caught sight of her work, and bam, she spoke to who I was, both as someone who was on a similar mission to, catch dreams midstream, and also as a photographer who found amazing, sublime human moments and express the immediacy of their most ardent passions and inner desires and experiences. I fell in love with her work the moment I saw it. There's always been a home in my heart for her work, though it doesn't only reside there. It's been in museums around the world, exhibited from Tel Aviv to Russia and ICP here in New York. She has been the face of countless dance companies and has been in New York Magazine and endless publications, and also been involved in some of the best corporations, or the biggest corporations on the planet. And don't forget her amazing photography books. One's out there, her newest one is out there, and she's going to be doing a book signing later. Lois has also been an artist in residence at NYU for the past few years. Joining her tonight, leading tonight's conversation, is Paul Galando, NYU colleague and fellow NYUer. He is president of Dance Films Association and founding director of Dance and New Media at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts. We're extremely proud to welcome Lois Greenfield and Paul Galando. Thank you.
Can I say thank you to you? To you and Tom Werner and Peter for spending over a year, right? Making this happen. And also I want to thank ASMP because I must be a member for at least 30 years and have taken advantage of all the fabulous resources and protections, and kind of gave me my education in how to run a business, frankly, and how to protect myself as best I can from things I even can't protect myself from. So I'm very grateful and very honored to be here. Thank you.
And also, I want to thank ASMP and also Parsons. I'm extremely grateful and thankful to my colleague and friend, Lois. I'm thrilled that you asked me to do this with you. We've presented a couple of times together, and she was an artist in residence at my program at NYU, and I'm just thrilled to be up here with her. We even have a Lois Greenfield room at my parents' place in Pennsylvania. So I've been a fan for a long time, and so has my family and a lot of my friends. What we're going to look at right now is a compilation of images from the 40 years of Lois's work, starting at the Village Voice in the New York Times, photographing rehearsals because back then you weren't filming, it was making a click. And then we're going to also look at images from her 3 books. The 3 books were Breaking Bounds, which was in 1992, Airborne, which is in 1998, and then we'll look at Moving Still, which was November of 2015, and we'll take a look at images.
We're celebrating its anniversary this month.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It's 1 year old.
Yeah. Cool, so we're going to start and show you this.
That was so long. I think it's 5 minutes of time, and I feel like I relived 40 years. Some of these you're going to be seeing again because they're fed into our keynote.
What's it like to relive the 40 years? I mean, does it still hit you in the same way?
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, I was like, drop the mic. That's it. Good night, everybody.
What?
No, I mean, it was like, it's such perfection.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, I only show the ones that work out. We all take a lot of pictures, and part of the enterprise is picking the ones you like best, that speak to you, that are maybe the unexpected moments, which most of mine are anyway, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah,
no,
Lois
it's
does
great
workshops,
to see it
and that's
all.
actually how I met her. I was director of a program at NYU, and I was so excited to know that she took workshops. So a little overview, should I sort of give an overview of what we're going to talk about in the next hour, is we're going to go over Moving Still and look at some of the images and the influence and talk about the book and things happening with this, this series. We're going to talk about how we met and her artist in residence at NYU, and we're going to look at a film that we worked on together for Michelle Obama's Let's Move campaign.
Sorry.
We're going to watch that opening again.
No, I was trying to get to the next thing, but it's okay.
Cool. And we're going to look at your influences. What,
Yeah.
how did you get involved in this? How did you start this?
And my antediluvian method of taking these pictures.
Exactly.
Counterintuitive and antediluvian. Go figure that one out.
We'll look at the process of Lois in the studio. We'll also look at your process outside of the studio and commercial work that she's done, and then also tying in the creative with the commercial work, because there were a lot of young artists out here, and also to hear ASMP talk about the business of photography. You are a very smart businesswoman as well, and I think that's really important to address and talk about also.
Sure.
Cool.
Yeah, and we're leaving time for Q&A because the most interesting questions are
Yeah.
often the ones you ask and not the ones that we might think are, salient.
We met a gentleman that was at one of Lois's workshops in 1999 that's here this evening too, so I was very inspired by him coming up. Okay, great, sure. A little louder? Okay. Inspired by hearing his story about taking her workshop. Let's dive right into Moving Still.
Okay.
This iconic image.
Yes?
Excellent. Do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah. Maybe I'll just give you an overview. You actually saw a lot of the pictures that we laid out in the keynote as part of the DFA collage. And the ones that we're identifying as Moving Still, which is the name of the book, is really a series that I call one-to-one. So of all of these 40 years, I always felt that I had to differentiate, I had to create differentiations between the anti-gravitational, kamikaze, ballistic kind of pictures I started out doing when I quit doing dress rehearsal photography, documenting performances, and decided to work in an improvisational way with dancers, finding first a room and a strobe light, and then expanding it to my own studio with 2 or 3 strobe lights, and creating images that were created for the camera, not images that documented any dance. I mean, we can talk about that later too, because I really veered away as quickly as I could from shooting literal moments of choreography, because I felt this is something that the audience sees on stage, and my allegiance was to photography and not to dance. I didn't come from the dance world. It was just one of the subjects that I started to shoot when I was a photojournalist, which was my original goal. And then I decided that I prefer to shoot these beautiful things rather than the riots and all the political things back in the early 70s. So, I don't know where I'm driving this at the moment, but I can go back and.
Well, what's great, so we use this image to represent Dance on Camera, and also when we honored you, and we were talking about using an image that you loved this because it fit the idea of it being cinematic, and it also fit with dance films because it has a cinematic feel. But it is a departure. It's very different from the catching a moment in time. I actually bought this, and I have this in my apartment right now. And this is one of my favorite images. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It is still catching a moment in time. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the one thing I've had an allegiance to this in my photography. So this moment was taken as this dancer was running in this fabric, and it's not something we could set up or art direct or walk in with a layout or anything like that. It's just something that happened when I created the parameter, this is where I was starting before, of this new series, which was to just have a vertical, non-gymnastic oriented, just things that the dancer would express themselves as though in a quiet moment, and there'd be some mystery to what was happening and why it was happening that would engage the viewer. So it was the same lighting setup, which was basically one light. And then we threw in a lot of different props, which you saw and which you'll see again. So catching the moment is the single most important thing.
Catching the moment is happening here, but without being able to see the expression on the face, is there any difference in your direction of when you're shooting this? Were you cognizant of the fact that this was going to be dark in the front?
No.
No.
Actually, the whole thing, and all the photographers will appreciate this, was radically underexposed by accident, because if you're working with malleable elements and one light, you're either going to be maybe too bright or in shadow, as she was, and this whole thing was very seriously underexposed from a technical point of view, and of course it's easy to brighten it up. I don't retouch, I don't Photoshop, I don't do anything other than simple cosmetic retouching of the background of the floor or something like that, but we don't recombine or recomposite or anything like that. What has fueled my interest all these years is catching something that's real, and it looks unbelievable, and you don't understand it, and you're not meant to understand it, and I don't understand it, but it actually happened, and had you been there, and had your eyes been capable, had your brain been capable of processing an image whose duration was a 2,000th of a second, you would have seen this. Of course, I didn't see it, you wouldn't have seen it, and we all couldn't see it. So we only see it because it's a photograph. And that's actually what I was starting to meander around in the first thought, that I wanted to, my passion, my interest has been sustained by the fact that I want to create a merger between two pretty much antithetical mediums, or media, one dance and one photography, where the result transcends both of them and can only exist as a photograph. Now, of course, you could do it in video, you could pull out a frame, and you still...
And this is Hachi Yu, right?
This is Hachi Yu. I've been working with her for...
Of yours.
No.
No? Never?
No, she was with the Elliott Feld Ballet Tech, and I worked with her for 20 years since she was a teenager at the school. And actually, we're going to close this presentation with a wonderful short video, a nonverbal short video of me shooting Hachi, filmed actually by a very talented Parsons student who not only made that film, interned with me, and is in Moving Still book as a dancer. So, well, maybe we're spending too much time on this picture.
Well, so here's Peru Chen Pat, Graham.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about this image?
Sure. Most of the pictures, most of the dancers in this series that we're looking at were blind dates for me. And I did that for a reason. When you work, I've had terrific collaborations for 20 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever, going back to the 80s with David Parsons and Daniel Ezerlo. But after a while, the artist has one style, and then she wants to move out of that style and create a new style. But if she works with the same, she is me, if I work with the same dancers or people that have grown up with Breaking Bounds or Airborne, when they come to me, they assume I want the kind of pictures in those two books, which I love and value, but I don't want to keep taking those pictures. So I have to kind of find something new. So one of the ways to find something new is to work with different dancers. So that's why I call it blind dates. I didn't interview them. I didn't see them perform. I mean, Peiju's from, she just quit Graham, but she was a lead with Graham and an Ailey dancer. I also have, as I said, you know, I've taken some 17 shots of my book with another intern. And my daughter-in-law is a dancer. She's in the book. And, but that's, I think, in a way, and a good thing to share is that if you want to refresh your art, it's good to change the parameters and work with people you haven't worked with, because they may have seen the books or not seen the books, but I just wanted them to be themselves and to improvise with these props that we were throwing at them. And
this
so
reminds me
that's the
of your workshop, right? So it's a 2-day workshop. I was so excited that I was able to take it, and what I noticed is there's an arc that happens in, like what you're talking about, the dancers that you bring in great dancers. I think the class that I was in was maybe 10 people, 5 professional photographers and 5 maybe novices, and it was truly remarkable to capture, or to start with the process of getting to know the dancers, and the dancers also got to know the system. And then, so by day 2, we were all on fire. But it was listening to you describe how you interact with the dancers and with your subject was hugely important. With Peru, she's so fierce as a performer, right? The hair that flies, and she's so incredible. Is there a common thread for what you look for in a subject? You mentioned you like different things about different people.
I'm just going to move this because I know people like to see pictures.
Yeah.
Oops. Ah! I'll let you do this.
Cool. I'll fly through some of these.
No, I mean, just as we're talking, we can
definitely.
We can do that. So what were you saying?
I was just saying, when you bring dancers in that you're going to photograph, like for the workshops, or when you're thinking about the subjects that you're going to photograph, can you tell before they start dancing anything about them, or do you know?
No, and there's no point in meeting them or in looking at their portfolio, because what I look for in them is going to be different from what other people do. But then, looking from the dancers that I'm going to continue to work with now I'm trying to keep up with that picture, have a relaxed expression. They're not performing like, here I am. And I always tell them, don't look at the camera, and it's not about a perfect position. Some dancers can't leave their choreography at the door, and others are delighted with the opportunity. I think like Peru from Graham, was the lead dancer there, but here she gets to explore all kinds of different feelings like that. So, I go for gentle expressions and soft hands, and nothing too harsh, nothing too obvious, nothing that looks like publicity. And I want there to be, this is very important, both a mystery and an intention in their faces. So when we look at the pictures as we go, I really look at that, and if the face isn't right, no matter what their body's doing, it's just not going to tell that story.
You've worked with Paul a lot.
I work with Paul a lot. This is a very long story. But this is Paul Zivkovich. I don't know if we're going to go into all the names, but I worked with him since I met him in 2002 in Australia. And brief history there, I was invited to create a dance with the Australian Dance Theatre, the premise of which was the the live capture and instantaneous transmission of moments from this dance that was projected on 2 screens. And
what year was this?
In Australia.
But what year?
I met them, I think it premiered in 2003.
Okay.
And then we did it, yeah. So I went there, this is somewhat interesting, and I did a photo shoot just the way I would do in my studio, just the way we said, and I created these moments, very ballistic kamikaze moments, because that was the style of the choreography, so it actually was a good fit. And then the choreographer, Gary Stewart, retrofitted those moments into his choreography so that I could be on stage live, like I'd be right there on kneeling and the dancers are here, and I would be taking the pictures of the live dance, not in a studio context. So that's how I met him. And we'd been collaborating ever since.
He's going to be in a lot of images.
Yeah, this is him too.
Mm-hmm.
He was a gymnast. A lot of the dancers I work with start out as gymnasts, and it gives them that, ability to do those things.
I've been photographed by you, which I'm very excited
And you're
about.
going to see him in the Let's Move video.
Thankfully, I was a gymnast. All right. Is it Paul again?
That's Paul again, showing my interest in Michelangelo. But we talk about that later a bit.
And also, you're playing with, is he pushing, is he pulling, the movement and the suspension of this image. That'll come up again later as well,
Yeah,
right?
no, I'm glad you said that because I always like that ambiguity. You don't know if the person's going up or going down. It's not, it's both static and kinetic at the same time.
Do you get the moment going up and coming down, or you have? That's a secret. That's a trade secret.
No, it's not a trade secret. I tell everybody this. I never shoot the peak moment. I mean, who knows? Maybe once or twice I did. I'm usually shooting when they're going up or going down, and that changes the entire emotional and narrative content of the picture. If they're going down, they're relaxed. If they're going up, there's more of a aspirational quality to it or feeling. And we'll see later. I'll ask everyone, is the person going up or down? And I love, if you want to go back, I'm in this new series, which I call 1-to-1 because we're printing them 3 foot by 4 foot, and you're on a scale that's maybe my life size, life size to me. No, I'm over. I'm way over 5 feet. But anyway, you have that sense that you're on a par as opposed to the 1620s, which once seemed so big years ago, which I feel now when I look at the 1620s, I'm looking at a document of something that happened. And then when I look at this series, wow, I'm inhabiting the dancer's space and time is passing as I'm watching, even though it's still that 2,000th of a second of a strobe that makes it imperceptible to the human brain. So now where'd I go with that? So I always like paint myself in a corner here. I was talking about the props. So I get things like, netting or, and I give them things to play with. And that creates the ambiance and the
And you're constantly
implicit
working
narrative.
with new props, right? Like you
Constantly.
yeah.
I basically either garbage pick them or go to the flower district or other unsavory districts and pick up things. And then we just have them in pools around and, oh, what should we throw this? Should we throw that?
I'm going to come back to this whenever we, but I mentioned that I wanted to talk about.
This is my secret. I skipped kindergarten and I've been making up for it ever since.
I talked about is this a trade secret? Can you talk about this or,
Maybe.
certain things? You're so generous to have a full-on workshop where we're with your Hasselblad, we're shooting the same way that you shoot, while I was taking it, I kept thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to be making the same I'm going to make Lois Greenfield art. And because I've been such a fan of it, I was very excited by that. But what I realized is it's the dialogue and the conversation, and this is echoed by the gentleman that said that he attended the workshop, that it's about you really teach your students to find their inner voice in the same way that you're exploring and looking for that in your dancers. And I teach that with my students in film, the same thing, use their own unique voice to talk about their companies and their style of dance. But it's truly remarkable after I left your workshop, 4 years later, to keep watching you create and create and create, and I am in awe. And it's watching you interact with your dancers. It's an entire methodology. Did that happen right away in the beginning, or did you evolve to that?
Well, it is organic, which is one of your favorite words.
Organic is my favorite word.
It just seems to happen on its own. Well, I started, 10 years in the trenches of City Center and whatnot, shooting dress rehearsals for all the media. And then I would find some piece of choreography or dancer that I wanted to work with, and I'd take some like Smith Victor clamp light and, you know, my, it wasn't a DSLR, my pre-DSLR camera. And
Where was the studio? Or where would you
well,
shoot
it wasn't. I just go to a church basement or someplace. I mean, could be here, and I just put up, you know. I mean, I didn't study photography. I didn't study lighting. I didn't, you know. I mean, all I knew about lighting was the flash on the camera when I would shoot like a rock and roll concert or a riot or something like that. That was lighting. So I would first take moments that I liked in a dance and transpose them to this setup and have them replicate it over and over again so I could get the best moment of a given phrase of choreography. And I couldn't do that when I was in the audience shooting. Not a live dance, we weren't allowed, but a dress rehearsal. So here I got, wow, we can do this moment again and again and again. And that has become the method I've stuck with for the most part. And your question was what?
Well, did you evolve to that success? In the beginning, did you feel like, were your images well received as you were creating them in the beginning, or was it time that? I mean, you were successful immediately.
Well, I don't know about that. Well,
did you spend a whole day working with the dancers at first, or were you getting stuff within a couple of hours?
Well, I think I would always give it at least half a day. I don't remember exactly where I was going with that, but I think the point was that I wanted to work with specific moments of choreography that I found photogenic.
Yeah.
And that was actually the way Barbara Morgan worked, and I interviewed her back when I was writing about photography, so I know that she worked like that. Barbara Morgan, I'm sure you all know, was the pioneer of modern dance photography, or whatever you want to call it. But I lose my thoughts as fast as I get them. I love windy things, you know. It's like throwing things or putting fans up, and
Can we talk about that? I mean, is it
Sure.
some of the elements? Yeah, you have your staff and your collaborators are extremely important. There's you want to talk about that? How many people do you have blowing fans? I've seen usually you'll have two people working the.
well, I'm
the
lucky if
fans
my
and
fan. I have
lighting.
one fan, and I'm lucky if it works. So this was actually taken for Ballet Tech, Elliott Feld's Ballet Tech. So once I kind of gave up the dress rehearsals and started working in a more personal way, dance companies would still come to me to shoot their dances, but allow me to reinterpret it or, you know, put a slightly different spin on it, so it wasn't quite literal. But the interesting, I'll call it a problem, the interesting situation in doing that is, how do you take a dance that happens on a big stage and create those same circumstances in a very limited studio where they don't have the same amount of movement or anything. So this dance on stage had 50, I definitely think it was 50 fans, and he was in a batting cage, and we had all this shredded paper. This is the actual shredded paper that Elliott brought to the studio, but he wanted like a signature image for this dance, and so we set up some of the conditions. But of course, because I'm now in the studio directing, when I saw him do this, and he started to look like a human tornado or the god of chaos, which wasn't what my brain hadn't processed it to that extent yet, but it was like, I like this, you know, don't move, just stand there, and we'll keep throwing the papers, and it.
We're going to get to looking at the process of sort of how that evolves, and so that'll we'll look at what you're talking about. This same balls in the
Which
shot
we
with-
see later. Yeah, they're
with the headstand.
styrofoam balls. I'm giving all my secrets away. They're styrofoam balls that you could get in any party shop or floral supply store. That's Peru again.
Pedro?
Yeah. That's Paul again. Now, when you see you are seeing it big. You're seeing it bigger than 3x4. You know, you see like the people are just slightly off. I mean, that's why Did we talk about the moment that I always like to shoot early or late? I said that. So it changes the entire feeling.
You know, so that's the same as going up or going down, early or late.
Yeah.
But
And
shooting it
actu-
is different, right?
Yeah. But actually, there's certain types of dance that is keyed towards a peak moment, and the kind of dance that I like to work with, the dancers improvising, has no peak. So you're always in transition. There's no moment of emphasis or anything like that.
I have this one up in my place as well. It's
Where did you get all these pictures?
From you.
I knew I was missing a few when I. That was my Parsons intern, Sophie.
And
Yes, yeah. And that's a signature moment from that dance called Held, from the Australian Dance Theatre. And when he came to studio, he wanted to do it. I was on board with this. I mean, having taken that picture, actually, I had to take 6 people across. And that show, by the way, toured over the, in the entire world for 7 years, off and on. And I said, I can't take this moment again. So I said, let's do something different. I have these styrofoam balls. Let's just, throw them in. I can't stand the headstand by itself. And then, unexpectedly, like all my work, it becomes, I choose the picture based on its resonance to the viewer or myself, so that all of a sudden I see, like, I've always been obsessed with gravity and anti-gravitational things, but you've got 2 separate gravitational fields here, so it becomes a whole planetary and like 2 worlds in one, whatever. I'm not
can
going to.
I ask how long you
I don't
held
like
that headstand? Is that like that?
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's the thing. Timing, which everyone gets from the workshop.
Mm-hmm.
You may remember at the beginning, people, I'm late, I'm early. And then, I'd say, just relax. And I say, don't look in the camera, just look at them. If you look in the camera, you're waiting to see the figure in the viewfinder, and by the time you push the shutter, it's finished. So I just set it so that I don't have to look through the camera, and it's an instinct you develop. I mean, I don't know, I don't have the time to think and process. I just know when I want to shoot.
I guess that's kind of what I was getting at also. Like in the beginning, did it happen right away, or did you always feel like this is a business, right? And you have a studio, and you have to book for a certain amount of time. When you're doing a shoot, you usually leave a half a day or a whole day.
I like to leave. Definitely like to leave a lot of time, but I mean, it depends. Like these pictures were taken not for commercial purposes.
Yeah.
So we're just having fun all day long in our sandbox.
Commercial purposes are tighter. You have it storyboarded. You know exactly what you're going to do.
Yes and no. We do talk about it at the end. So some of the commercial work is based on, like clients would say, oh, I like this picture. They picked a picture from, I'll talk about that later when we get to those pictures.
Right.
We have to move fast.
So,
what's this?
Okay. We're going to talk a little bit. So we already talked about how we met through my taking your workshop. And we became collaborators. We started working on projects together, friends. I'm thrilled by that.
As am I.
Thank you. We at NYU, through one of my students actually, we were asked by Michelle Obama's Let's Move campaign to create a video, and I talked with Lois and asked her if she would be interested in being involved with it and coming in and doing a photo shoot with my students. And they were, you can imagine, like when they showed up on set and there's Lois, everyone was thrilled. So this is a short film that we did that sort of shows you outside of the studio. We're going to come back to looking at you inside the studio, but we're in a somewhat of a studio, but a large loft
And
in
it's
Long Island City.
a completely different way of working. I mean, they did repeat the movements, but I specifically wanted them bouncing off the wall, and I wanted a shadow, and I wanted that kind of just on-the-fly kind of thing.
And I was shooting with a Canon 1DC. I was shooting with like a 4K camera, and then documented Lois's incredible shoot. So
and I was shooting with
this
a DSLR because my normal Hasselblad, my manual Hasselblad, which is now being venerated by Hasselblad, is on a tripod, and I wind it, and I click, and I wind it, and I click, and I run with a tape measure to measure the distance, and that's why I called it,
And we're going to see footage of that as well, right?
Yeah.
You have that, okay.
Yeah.
Great.
But this was a completely different way of working because you're just shooting on the fly. You're not.
Okay, so let's move.
Your jeans ripped? Your jeans ripped?
Oh my God! It was all for a good cause. Just to be clear, my involvement, you saw, was in the still pictures, not in the video. And I think you saw Paul doing some nice little moves and splitting his pants. Anything for art?
Anything for art. Yeah, and I love that we get to see the behind the scenes of what it's like, the energy that you created with the students. You can see the excitement on their faces. That doesn't happen every day in class. So
Because I let them be themselves.
you let them be themselves. Yeah. Amazing.
So, good.
Your influences.
My influences.
Yeah.
And we'll add also the photographers. So it's a kind of a retrospective influence in that when I look at my work, I'm going to talk too much. I'm just going to go through this.
Sure.
So this is Bernini, and I had studied in Florence for half a semester of my junior year, and kind of through osmosis got all this great, Renaissance art, which without realizing it, I think I don't know what the word is, I unconsciously then maybe absorbed some of those elements.
What were you
so to
studying when you were
speak.
there?
It was just general as a junior. I was studying life.
Yeah, okay, cool.
But when I look back on a lot of this is now the early work from the 80s, film, of course, black and white, square format Hasselblad with the border. I think I was drawn to those moments that would have, and bodies and expressions that had a similar narrative and sculptural quality.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I started with the Bernini. It was nothing flat. I wanted it all. And this, is a totally accidental moment cropped off by the square frame, but, you start to think of Michelangelo. I can look back at the first series that we saw of Paul and other things as, it's all unconscious or subconscious. And
So this happened by accident, but then you sort of kept with that concept? You did a whole series
well, when you're
around
working
that?
with accidents, the concept your allegiance then is to accidents. So you can't replicate anything or say, oh, good, you jump this way and you jump this way, let's line it up, So it's just sort of being alert about accidents and working with people who know how to balance on their hair. I mean, not everyone can do that.
No.
So, but back to the sculptural, Bernini obviously thought of his sculptures not just as frontal, but something you could walk around. And I think he even placed them near windows in his museum and everything because of the light falling on it. So I think the lighting I ended up using was a 3/4 sculptural light, not flat and frontal. And I started by, say, circumnavigating a sculpture like that, thought about this is a great opportunity, because you get two different, this is the same sculpture, but it's two different stories and two different perspectives.
Yeah.
So I thought, wow, I'm no longer on the stage, I'm in my studio, which has some of the same limitations, but I can actually walk around the dancers and shoot something from a different perspective than the audience can see in a proscenium format. And then I don't have to shoot in the corner, I just tell them to rotate. And that's something I actually tell at the workshop. Don't just take the presentational position that the dancer is offering you, have them do it to the right, do it to the left, do it upstage, do it downstage, and then you get more of that sculptural quality. So, and the other thing from the different perspectives, this picture, which was the cover of one of the editions of my Airborne book, is this company literally going up, making a table, and coming down. I said, oh, let me look at it from the side. So, of course, they do it a few times, and this is the side view.
Oh, wow.
It's two completely different things. And I guess when why I keep referencing sculpture is a painting doesn't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
It shows you the one perspective, and you can't walk around a painting and see it from the side.
I've seen those too 100 times, and I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that was
well,
like
no
just
one would
changing.
know it. I mean, if I hadn't been there, I wouldn't have known it. And then the sculptural, like, there's a way in which the photography transforms the fluid into the solid. And ironically, sometimes the thinner the slice of time I photograph, the more solid the moment ends up looking. So this photograph, she's doing a one-armed handstand, and she has flung the skirt over, crossed her legs, and I shot it when it hit the ground. So there's the illusion of stability in something that's totally fluid. She can't possibly be stabilizing herself with that. And then ambiguous moments like, is she landing on this cube, or has a wind knocked the cube off and she's flying off? And there are no answers, and I don't want answers. I never title my pictures anything other than the name of the dancers, and if there's a dance involved, dance, because I don't want to influence anyone's experience of the picture and have them think of it in a certain way. This, by the way, is an example of the late moment we talked about. I don't like the peak moment. Not that there would be a peak moment necessarily in this improvisation, but the fact that his face is relaxed and that the ropes that he has entangled himself in before he jumped up, the ropes are above his head, so he's coming down. That's the trick to find out if they're coming up or down after the fact, but it's catching it as it happened. He's more relaxed, he's like a bud or whatever. There's our guy Paul again upside down. They just must, look, it's Australia, they're all upside down there. This was pretty literal from a dance company. Okay, so process. So these are some Danny Ezralow. And these were like among the first experiments I did, collaborations, where I distinctly invited a dancer. At this point, I'm in a studio with a gray marley floor and a gray background. And they were dancers with Paul Taylor, David Parsons, and Daniel Ezralow, and they were thrilled to experiment with movements that were not part of choreography. We just had a blast, and I didn't want them in costumes. I just wanted them in street clothes.
And there's no real trick there. It's just he's able to hit that move and hold it for a long time, although it's tough with the baby. But it's not jumping, but it still is incredibly beautiful.
Did he hold it for a long time? Has anyone held any of these pictures for a long time?
That's a very good question. I guess not, then.
No.
He did not hold it for a long time.
I mean, there may be one or two, like there was a woman lying on the floor, and she could have held it for a while. How long could he hold this?
And it would have been something different.
How long could he have held this? Held this?
I could do it, but I'd split my pants. So, yeah.
He might have split his pants, but so I forgot again where I was going with that. Where was I going with that?
Well,
one?
just this image. You could,
I'm like
as
a
a dancer,
careening vehicle. I shoot like a
hold that,
careening vehicle, and I think like one.
But you would have had something radically different had you had him hold that position for a long time, pose it, hit it. You like that he. I mean, what happened in this shot? You just sort of went for a second?
I have a whole series of him with the baby, and then they're all wonderful and different. There's actually he could have held this arabesque for a long time.
Yeah.
Could the baby have held that expression for a long time?
Bingo. No.
This is one of these miracle moments that you're just so glad you have your finger near the shutter when it happens, because you can't tell the baby what to do. What happened,
I have a 3-year-old, I know.
No, very.
Yeah.
I'm just breaking this down to like common sense. Danny actually, by fiddling around the baby in all kinds of positions, ended up like this and immediately copied her position. It wasn't that he was there and we said, "Oh, give me the baby fast," It doesn't work like that. So,
Cool.
And this is what I love so much. They're just moments from nowhere.
Yeah.
Now here's an example. Is he going up or going down? I need a show of hands, but I won't be able to see them. Yeah. So, yeah, first of all, I don't think he's going down, that I know. The hair's going up, and he still has a spur on his back, too, to honor the thing. So, okay, let's keep moving forward.
Yep.
And so this is from that same series, and this is the point now where, to see process and how I shot it, and you can see how I art directed it, how careful I was, how my directorial skills and all that. And by the way, this was actually a really lucky break. I was just experimenting with the square format Hasselblad for commercial work I started doing. And again, I didn't have a motor drive or anything like that. And working in a square format is so counterintuitive, especially for dance, which happens, more or less in a horizontal rectangle. And I'm cutting it off as a square. So there's all these great incidental, wait, did we miss one? Oh, yeah. Look at the cropping here. This is all in camera with the black border. I never cut off the black border. That's the actual full frame negative. It's just chance. And just out of total chaos, Not every contact sheet yielded something like that, but like this is all pretty much a mess. Well, I guess we can have questions later. So this is technically commercial work, but it's in this section, again, to show you process. I did, because it's commercial work, the others I could just afford to, okay, jump around, let's have fun. But here I had to tell a story, and the story was precision moments or movements. I never remember. Help me out.
Movements.
Movements. And they came to me, this watch company, after seeing Breaking Bounds, and saw the configurations of dancers that I made in that book, and they said, we want to express precision movements with dancers. So then I was the de facto art director, in a sense, with the concepts that would express that. And this is all in film, and we did it thousands of times. The numbers, by the way, in the context sheets don't mean anything because we developed them all in-house, and we just numbered them as they came out. They weren't numbered sequentially to how we shot them.
Were you doing commercial work from the mid-'80s? Or?
Well, this was the mid-'90s.
This was the mid-'90s when you were doing this. Breaking Bounds was 92, so you were already...
Breaking Bounds was 92, so maybe they saw it, and I shot this in 93. The book led to a lot of things,
When
which
did you
was
start
great.
commercial work around?
Well, I actually started it earlier, doing fashion and doing kids and whatever. So I just, wanted, again, just to show how it was created. And again, here I had this, because I keep saying how I work totally improvisationally, but when you have to convey a concept, then you have to think ahead. So I thought this looked like gears of watches somehow, within a watch. So these are acrobats and gymnasts, and the actual somersault they did was not difficult for them to reach the height or to do it. But when you think of the timing to coordinate 4 people without Photoshop, so, you see number
Without
25 here, but that was probably for the whole day. So can you all see which one the perfect picture is? Or the winning picture, or the picture I showed you? Yeah, top right.
Top right.
And I am so proud that this actually happened. Of all the 10, it's kind of hair-raising to be a photographer on a big job, and knowing there's also no Photoshop because you're shooting film, and you don't want to use that anyway. And this too, I had somewhat of an idea for this. This is one of the few shots I had a concept that I was interested in pursuing, which was that this dancer would look as though he's in an hourglass, and you're imagining this sand on his body as the sand is descending to the other side of the hour. Does that make sense? So it's not like you're seeing these sculptural bodies in the air forever. This is a split second that you're imagining. And we took thousands and thousands of pictures, because to get, oh my God. I can't be trusted with this thing. You can take me back. We're going to be in outer space. We're going the wrong way. Stop.
There we go.
Because we were controlling the powder coming down on him, and he actually wasn't much of a dancer, so I only got kind of one position out of him. But the chance factor of getting one where, everything was perfect was pretty slim.
Mm-hmm.
So so this is just another of the themes that I'm extremely fond of, which is mirrors. What I like about the mirrors is that the camera shows you one perspective, but mirrors nested in the picture bring the off-screen space into the photograph space and give you multiple perspectives, which,
This is a new thing for you, or you've been working with mirrors for a long time?
It actually goes back to one of my first business cards when I was a travel photographer, and I took a picture of a window in Brittany, and it was one of those convex or concave mirrors so that one car could see the other thing, and I was shooting the mirrors with their reflections. I've actually been, throughout all phases. I'm just showing a few here. It's definitely been a...
This was, what year was this around, do you think?
Oh, this was with Paul from the Australian Dance Theatre it had to be after 07, so 07 or 08. And I'll give all my secrets away. They were mirrors I got from a store that sold security mirrors, so that a bodega wouldn't be, they could see who's pilfering what. But, and...
All right, cool.
Yeah. It wasn't glass, so it was plastic. And then, mirrors that bend, and I talked about ambiguity. Like, I always liked, when I look at this, I don't know if she's being chased by this wave of a mirror or she's being sucked into it. And ditto this.
Mm-hmm.
And this is that same mirror. And I think this is so cool because the mirror allows you to see the dancer both entering the frame and leaving the frame. More fun with mirrors. It's because I skipped kindergarten. And more like that. And this self-portrait.
Oh, yeah.
Inadvertent self-portrait. You just find yourself in a picture. You didn't even dress for the occasion. Oh, good. So we're moving along. So we're already at commercial work. So this doesn't look like commercial work, does it?
Does not?
He said the right thing. He didn't know what the answer was. So I was lucky enough that after all these books and everything, I got clients that wanted me to interpret their product with my own vision and using dancers. So this was for an arthritis drug. So what does this have to do with arthritis? I mean, you could imagine, but it's not literal, and no one's going to guess it. So their tagline was that their product was about balancing the efficacy of the drug and the potential toxicity of the drug. So they wanted pictures that connoted balance, of which I had many. And this was in 2001,
Okay.
which has another significance, which is the ad never appeared because the economy crumbled and people stopped advertising and all that. But I went into my files and I pulled out all these pictures, of balance and whatnot. And it was a fun job, because you get to, illustrate a concept. And this was another commercial job, but this was actually taken during the casting session.
Mm-hmm.
JVC Jazz Festival, excuse me, asked me to create a poster for them. So because I like things that are angelic and flying and whatnot, I said, why don't we have a dancer as a bass player flying in and playing the bass? So I did a casting call, an audition, and this fellow Pacho, who's in other of my work that we've seen, the Raymond Weil pictures, he came all dressed for the part. And I had this gray model backdrop up because I shot something against it the day before, and this was just a casting session, so why bother taking it down? And of course, we're shooting film. So anything black and white here is film.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that's in color is most likely not film. So anyway, he goes to do it, and the method, he couldn't get it. But he said, I'm going to stay and coach everybody anyway. So he stayed the whole day, coached everyone else. And at the end of the day, he said, Lois, can I try again? I said, of course, Pasha, of course you can. So he did it once, and the method was we had an assistant holding the double bass, and the moment the dancer went up, went horizontal, hit the frets, or tried to, the assistant let go of the bass so that they're not in the shot. And then the moment he let go to come down, they ran in to get it. That was a simple method, and we did it over and over again. So anyway, he tried it again, and I see this Polaroid. This is the days of Polaroids where you see 2 inches by 2 inches, and you have to make some decision with your magnification loop. And I knew to put film in. You know, this was not going to happen again if I didn't take it, you know, right away. And I'm certainly glad I did, because when we actually did the shoot, he got the job and everything, but the client didn't want the background. It was a whole different thing. So, and
How did he jump? This is
yeah, he goes up. He's a gymnast. He goes horizontal, and then landing's his business. I don't coach them on landing. They just have to know how to get down. That's it. I can tell them how to get up, but you know. But you can do it. We can work on that at the studio.
I'm down.
Yeah, so that's that. And this one, which looks like the Powder Man shot, was for a camera company, and I'm not going to say anything more about that. So that's how, like, so these 3 shots were commercial jobs based on art, and there were many, many more of that. So that's a blessed spot to be in. And then I get a lot of work from things involving movement and dance, and I'm just showing you very few, because I've been working in my archives, and I filled up a room of all my tear sheets, so I'm like, whoa. Now this was a composite, and not by my hand, but with commercial work, you give the picture to the client, and they want to do that, and that's fine. I mean, I wouldn't pass it off as anything other than that.
Composite as in 2 different dancers at 2 different times, then refused to
Yeah,
get it?
yeah.
Okay.
This was with springboards and whatnot for, So it's interesting that in my niche, you know, of dance, there are a lot of, you know, commercial applications for this. And album covers.
That's great.
You can tell it's a while ago because of the model's backdrop and all of that. No, it's true. It
Who was
gives
with Tony
itself
Bennett
away.
in that picture?
That was a dancer.
Oh, that's amazing.
This is not dancing. And then, you know, this is a whole other area, but stock photography. So pictures that I've taken that are on my web or all over, you know, end up being used metaphorically or whatever. So it's kind of cool. This was a calendar that the Taj hotels made. And I allowed them to change the color, but I thought they were fun.
This is in the Lois Greenfield room in my family's house. We have this
Oh,
calendar.
the
We
calendar.
have
You
your
have
other
all my
calendar.
calendars.
We have lots of posters.
Okay, so now we're actually getting to the end. So it's going to start in a second.
Ensina notis de turbada, ensina notis mamedunho, misti ojau, una luta, macudido tem que lutar, sem vingança, una venci. Minjero lumia budias, lua na lumia bunotis, estrela na mostra o caminho, para mundo de irmãos, que na boa vida é virou costa. Que na boa vida é virou costa. Guirta liberdade, com mapa da César, que de César, minha do mão direito.
So the filmmaker, Sophie Culler, was a student at Parsons New School. And she interned with me, and she made these films, and I photographed her for the book as well. And you saw her pictures in the thing.
Perfect.
So,
And that's what it feels like when you're
Yeah.
shooting with you. We're going to open it up
Yeah.
to questions from the audience. But if I could just ask you one more quick question about, we'll have a lot of students in the audience. Advice you would give on thinking about creating a career in photography?
well, I always feel you should follow your passion because you're going to do best what you love to do. And if you're simply going to copy, well, the two things, if you're going to copy existing styles, they're probably going to choose the person that originated them. And also by the time you copy something, it's already old hat. So in a way you have to think ahead of that, but not too mechanically. I mean, for me, it was a whole zigzag road where I fell into things, and I worked with David Parsons, who brought me a new energy, and I, worked with a camera that was counterintuitive, and, I think the main thing is you just keep going. We were talking before, or I was talking with someone else actually about a very talented graduate from a photo school, really, ready to hit the ground running, and she just never showed her book around, and she was top of her class and everything. And I said, go. I mean, show your portfolio or whatever it is now, And if they don't like it, if they don't see what they want for their purpose, is fine. Or if they don't like it, they don't remember you. They don't keep a list and say, X person, I didn't like it. So you can go now, and then you go in 6 months, or now I guess you don't actually take your portfolio around, so that's an old-fashioned thing. But however you're going to do it, whatever you're going to post, but you can't just post and walk away. You still have to be aggressive, and you have to meet people, and you have to. But the point is, because it's true, everything has changed and evolved. Don't hold back. I knew I wanted to do this. When I think of the first portfolios I went out with, they were laughable. But that was where I was at that time. And it didn't bother me what anyone said because I was evolving and I was going to change and I could learn from what they said. Mm-hmm. And what was the third thing then? That I didn't necessarily give their point of view all that much credence. I did learn from them, and I was evolving. And if you don't keep going, if I didn't keep going, I wouldn't have stumbled on all the things I literally stumbled on. So it's in the doing, and just really being true to yourself, because especially now, anyone can take a picture. I mean, we used to have to learn something to operate a camera, and now you don't, right? Am I wrong? I mean, I have to learn because there's all too many buttons, That's why I use this manual camera. But so the competition is enormous. So the main thing the photographer has to offer is some unique perspective. And that's why actually I got interested in photography, because I feel I can only see and perceive the world from my brain. But if I see your pictures, I can perceive the world another way. So it expands our consciousness and our uniqueness. So I would say it's okay to copy just like to copy, just to learn skills, but go out on a limb and make mistakes. And actually at the workshop I tell people, don't just shoot something one way. Mm-hmm. Like someone may get a great shot of a great jump, whatever. I would tell any student, force yourself to try it 2 or 3 other ways. Change the lighting, change the angle, change the perspective, change the lens. Don't just take what you have. And then I think people that create their own style, which mine was radical at the time, and maybe like, what, she's cutting hands off dancers, or what's going on here, But if you don't try and experiment, and just let yourself go. You don't have to show the pictures to anyone. You're just having fun. You should have fun. If you're not having fun, you might as well get another business because you're not going to get rich in this business, so you might as well have fun. So those are my, just keep going and don't over-worry anything.
It's a lot of great wisdom there. And what's next for you, by the way? You always reinvent yourself. I love that. You're
Oh my
always
God, what's
constantly
next?
doing interesting things.
I don't know.
Good, I like that. Okay, that's cool.
I'm happy with my shows now and my new book and my, I'm just trying to hang on to the whirlwind that I'm still in.